Hey guys, welcome back to GuardKeep. Today I have a bit of a different video for you. So many of you may have seen the current trend for iceberg videos. This is where someone makes an iceberg chart where the further down you get, the more obscure or darker things get. So often these are done for like conspiracy theories or games, but today I am going to be doing the speedcubing iceberg. So I've put this together myself and I'm going to talk you all the way through it, and you will find out some very interesting facts and other information about cubing that I bet you didn't know before. So there are all sorts on here, from controversies to methods to puzzles to just crazy facts. So let's dive in. The very first entry is Max Park has autism. So this is just in reference to the fact that Max Park has autism and that cubing has helped him to deal with this. And this was quite a major theme of the recent The SpeedCubers documentary, which I would definitely recommend checking out if you haven't already. Red Bull comps. So this is talking about Red Bull competitions, the Red Bull World Championship events that have happened in the last couple of years in speedcubing. They're kind of controversial in the cubing community, as they're much more spectator friendly and unaffiliated with the WCA, with like head-to-head races and other events such as Rescramble. And lots of famous cubers like Dana Yee, Felix Semdegs and Chris Mills have competed in them. To me, they look really good. The third entry is puzzle modding. So this is simply referring to the fact that some people choose to mod puzzles. So they'll get them and they'll transform them into incredible new puzzles, and it always seems pretty amazing to me. If you want to see more of this, then you can check out Nathan Wilson's channel. I'll leave a link up here or up here, and it's pretty cool. Lubricant simply refers to the fact that there are special lubes for speed cubes. And to people who are not in the community, this can seem quite strange, but it's very common in cubing. Cursed picture cubes. So this next one is referring to how if you have picture cubes and you do some kind of center commutator, then it can look really, really strange. So like if you do ME, M prime, E prime, then you'll get some really cursed stuff and it can look very, very odd. I'll show you a couple of examples on screen now. Next up is Easy Cubing. So Easy Cubing is a YouTube channel that's memed on quite a lot and generally not liked very much in the cubing community because his content is pretty clickbaity and quite low effort. Personally, I don't really know enough about him to pass judgment and I haven't watched any of his content. Cubing books refers to the fact that there are some special cubing books, such as the one right here that can teach you how to solve a cube, although I actually couldn't learn from this one. It didn't help me. Maybe I'm just stupid. Green Cross is referring to the fact that there are a surprisingly large amount of people who use Green Cross in the cubing community, and I think this is due to a certain old tutorial by Dan Brown where he taught the cube on Green Cross.
Hey world, my name is Dan Brown, and I'm here to teach you how to solve one of society's modern day mysteries.
But I'm not certain about that, so correct me if I'm wrong. Please videos are a new thing that are getting quite popular. They're a very lazy piece of content in my opinion, where you say please and then the name of a cuber, for example, please Felix, and then you show a better alg than the one that they currently use for a certain case. So you kind of use their name as clouds, and I really don't like this. Okay, so moving on now to tier 2, and the first entry is multi-slotting. So this is an advanced F2L technique used to solve multiple F2L slots at once. Honestly, I don't know much about this, and it seems pretty complex to me, but lots of fast cubers use it, so I guess it's pretty good. The SpeedCubers is referring to the excellent documentary that I did mention earlier about the competitive relationship between Felix Semdegs and Max Park, and also about how Max Park and his family dealt with his autism through cubing. If you haven't seen it yet, watch it. ZBLL is pretty widely known, and it's a method used to solve the last layer all in one step if you have a cross OLL case. There are around 450 cases, so obviously it's a pretty huge undertaking, but I guess if you know them all, or at least some easier ones, then it can be very useful. Rubik's Magic is a folding tile puzzle that was once in the WCA, but has been removed because it's not really a twisty puzzle, and that's pretty much it. That's all there is to Magic. Celebrity Cubers refers to the fact that some very well-known celebrities can solve the cube, such as Will Smith, Justin Bieber and PewDiePie, and this is pretty interesting to me. Fake solves is referring to the fact that some people do fake solves and post them on YouTube or to online competitions. So I included this just because it's something to be wary of, and if you were thinking of posting fake solves, then just don't, because there's no point and the chances are you will get found out. The Yusheng Du world record controversy is talking about the fact that initially, when Yusheng Du's world record of 3.47 seconds was announced, many people thought it was fake. This is because it was just so much quicker than the previous world record. It was almost a second quicker, and also initially there was absolutely no video of it as it was in China, and then eventually we found a video from the security camera inside the venue, and so we could see it. Also, I think lots of people were a bit questioning because China is in general more secretive and doesn't connect with the cubing community through stuff like YouTube, so that was probably an issue. If you want to learn more about this, JPerm has an excellent video on it. So finally in tier 2 we have the search for God's number. So God's number is basically the perfect solution. What's the minimum number of moves that any scramble can be solved with? And the answer is 20 moves. There was a very long search and lots of clever maths, and eventually that answer was found. And if you want to learn more about this, because it is very fascinating, then there are great videos by JPerm and the Cubing Historian, so I'd recommend checking them out. Okay then, so moving on now to tier 3, and the first entry here is hexagonal Francisco, which is a method invented by the YouTuber Colourful Pockets. It's pretty weird, and as the name suggests, you have to build a hexagon, solve the E layer, and then do a bunch of very weird stuff that I really don't understand to complete the rest. The Devil's algorithm is a theoretical algorithm that would cycle through every single possible permutation on the cube, all 43 quintillion of them. There's also the Devil's number, which is however long this algorithm would have to be if it was going to cycle through all of the solutions, but I'm pretty sure that this hasn't been solved and people don't really know how to solve it. The Gen 5 timer refers to the newest edition of the StackMat timer, and it has caused quite a stir on its release. You have to have your thumbs on the back to activate the timer, and so if you're a stacker, this is really annoying, but for cubing it's still fine and it's not really different because you don't have to have your thumbs on the back. I'm pretty sure lots of stackers are very annoyed about this. Obscure Chinese speed cubes refers to the fact that there are probably some cubes which we simply don't have or don't really know about in the West, but have been released and are used in China. So an example of this is the Guoguan EDM 4x4. Over in the West we have a 2x2 and a 3x3 for this, but apparently there is also a 4x4 of it. Honestly, I don't know if this is certain, but if it is, then it's very interesting and there could be some really good cubes that we just simply don't know about. The Cubicle versus Ruwix refers to the lawsuit that occurred between these two parties. It was something to do with trademarks, and originally Ruwix sued the Cubicle for trademark misuse, and then the Cubicle sued Ruwix back because they were holding on to old trademarks that was basically preventing speedcubing from pushing forwards and preventing new innovation. Eventually the Cubicle did win, but the whole thing was quite bitter and aggressive. FTO stands for Face Turning Octahedron, and this is a puzzle that is gaining a lot of popularity. As the name suggests, it's an octahedron, and the current unofficial world record is a 14.29 by Dan Patuskov, and it looks pretty difficult. Some people have also called for this to be added to the WCA, and I do think that that could be an idea. I don't personally have one, but I'd quite like to get one of these, and I think it could be fun to try. Rubik the Amazing Cube was a very, very painful TV show in the 80s that aired for half an hour on Saturday mornings. It chronicled the adventures of Rubik, a cube who had managed to escape from an evil magician, and that could fly, and also had magic powers, but it could only use these powers when it was in a solved position. It seems very cringy now, and it's quite funny to think that the cube was so popular at one point that they made a TV show about it. 1LLL is simply one look last layer, a pretty mental method that solves the entire last layer all in one algorithm. Some people claim to know these, or some of these at least, but I don't think anyone knows them all, or at least I really hope not, because there are 3,916 algorithms. That is just mind-blowing. Alright then, so moving on now to tier 4, and suddenly this is where I had no longer heard of pretty much any of these things. The first entry is the K4 method, and this is short for Kirjava's 4x4 method. And this is a super efficient block building method for 4x4, which only takes 120 moves as opposed to 150-ish for both Yao and Hoya, so it's much more efficient and also has less rotations. It uses a lot of commutators and also uses ELL, which is a way of solving the last layer, and these two things are actually its main cons because commutators can be quite complex and ELL is confusing and requires quite a lot of algorithms. Obviously, there's no 3x3 stage in the K4 method because it doesn't work on a reduction basis, so you complete the first 3 layers and then solve the last layer in one. Also, apparently this method can be pretty hard to learn, and although it seems quite good, it's not widely used, so I guess it's not particularly plausible. Old Felix Semdeg's post is something that I found online, but I'm not so sure about. To me, it seems to be referring to the fact that there are probably some really old posts by Felix back when he first started cubing on forums or maybe Facebook, but I haven't really been able to find any that are particularly old or interesting. The oldest one I found was a 2014 Facebook post with Felix in the famous orange hoodie. The Gear 1 is a very obscure puzzle that I had never heard of before. As the name suggests, it's a gear variant of the square one, which is probably pretty interesting. It's a very odd looking thing, and I think it was a custom exclusive thing made by Oscar's Puzzles, so you probably can't buy it. Red KB has a video on it, and also Can Chris Solve, so you can check them out if you're interested. Speedcubing and arthritis refers to the fact that there can be a link between these two things. The high-speed, precise finger movements can put a lot of stress on the joints and bones of your fingers, and this can cause the painful condition arthritis, as in the famous case of Lucas Etter, who was and still is a fantastic cuber. He competes in the Monkey League and he had a world record at one point, but he developed severe juvenile arthritis, so now he has to be very careful with his cubing so that he doesn't get really painful fingers. It's one of the sadder things in cubing, but luckily it's not very common, so don't worry. Zeroing is Felix Semdeg's alleged secret method. So this is supposedly what allows him to be so fast. Some crazy look-ahead technique or magical, secretive F2L method that allows him to have incredible look-ahead and deduction and pretty much pauseless solves. But I think it's generally accepted that this is just a bit of a joke to try and explain why Felix Semdeg is so skilled. Next up we have WC 2007, and this was the World Cubing Championships way back when, over 10 years ago now, when you could win worlds with a 12.46 3x3 average. But anyways, the reason why this competition is on the Iceberg is because of a cheating scandal that occurred. So, a blind solver called Matthias Kuti was found to have been peeking underneath his blindfold during 3-blind, 4-blind, and multi-blind, where he got 77 out of 77 cubes. So obviously, since then, we now have a laminated piece of paper in front of your eyes during blind, which prevents you from peeking even if you wanted to, but Matthias Kuti did get banned from competitions after this, and it's still one of the biggest controversies in speedcubing history. Moving on to Roll and Joel, these are two interesting speedcubing methods pioneered by Jaden McNeil. So he has a lot of weird and wonderful speedcubing ideas, and these are two techniques for the last layer. Roll is a method of corner prediction, so that during OLL you can basically deduce what PLL you're going to get, and Joel is basically a version of this for edges, so during OLL you can predict and infer where certain edges are going to be. Basically, they're clever prediction strategies so you know what PLL is coming up. Rare Ruwix puzzles refers to some of the most obscure old puzzles made by Ruwix that are now very obscure, and very few of them are available. An example is the Ruwix 15, which is like a classic sliding 15 puzzle, but you use levers to operate it, and there's also a magic square on the back. The Ruwix shell has a bunch of balls inside it that can be moved around, and you need to restore them to one colour in each shell. And the Ruwix ring is kind of similar to the shell, with beads that you have to move around and put back into the right place. These are honestly look like pretty rubbish puzzles, but they're pretty classic as well. Where is Mintai refers to the former world record holder and one of the greatest cubers back in the day, Mintai. But nowadays he's nowhere to be found and is no longer in the cubing scene. There has been some speculation on Reddit, and there was an Easy Cubing video where he claimed that Mintai is now working in an LA perfume shop, but a Reddit detective actually found that there is a town executive in the Los Angeles area whose name is Mintai, and in this video you can see that he has a Rubik's Cube on his desk, so I think we found him, mystery solved, there is Mintai. Okay then, so now we're going on to the deepest of the deep, it's tier 5. And first up we have the Smart Egg Puzzle. This is a very strange puzzle that I found that is an egg with a wand inside of it, but to solve it you need to release the wand by following a certain route through the egg. They seem simple, but they're apparently deceptively difficult, and there are a bunch of different designs going from the easiest one, which is the Groovy Egg, which can be solved in 8 moves, to the hardest, which is the Frank Einstein Egg. oh god, that pun, which will take at least 28 moves. They seem pretty bizarre to me, and I don't really think they'd be very fun. LLEF is a very obscure and little known alg set that stands for last layer edges first, and it's a take on traditional ELL where the edges are solved before the corners, as normally in the last layer this is done the other way round. It uses fewer moves and the total cases are less than in normal ELL, but recognition is really hard, and so other than in FMC this is not really used. Rubik's Cube health risks refers to the fact that there are a few potential different health risks that are associated with cubing. Arthritis is one, which I mentioned earlier. Addiction is another. The fact that it can be easy to become addicted to cubing, and it being very distracting and problematic, although I personally think that it's not that hard to have the willpower to just put your cube down. And finally, toxicity. So this may sound really ridiculous, but it has been found in some studies that Rubik's Cubes contain the chemicals octa and deca BDE, which are poisonous. But honestly, this was kind of a joke entry. I don't think you need to worry. I literally set fire to a Rubik's Cube and I'm fine. Next up we have Jack's solution, which refers to a very obscure 3x3 method that I found. The only reference to this that I could find was from a very old post on the speed solving forums, which explained that this method came from a Rubik's Cube tutorial book from the 80s called The Simple Solution to the Rubik's Cube. And the tutorial was very confusing, and it included a very complex and illogical lettering scheme. Even in its first year, the book sold over 6 million copies, so it's kind of amazing that there's so little reference to the method nowadays, but I guess that's proof that it was a very bad method. Old or lost WCA documents refers to the potential that there could be some important documents or statistics from the WCA that are either lost or unavailable. So an example is the report about Matthias Kuti's cheating, which has never been made public. There could also be some really old documents that tell us about the original rules or events of the WCA, and they could be very interesting. Not that much to this one, just a possibility really. The Xiaowei Pineapple 3x3 is in reference to a very funny April Fool's joke made by the Cubicle back in 2016. The Xiaowei Pineapple 3x3 was made as a product on their website, and it's still there for $16, although you can't actually buy it. The material was described as being ABS and pineapple, and in the description it was explained that this was the collaboration between the Chinese designer Yi Xiaowei and a cuber supposedly faster than Felix Zemdegs called Michael Humu Humu Kunu Kunu Apua. Yi Xiaowei got lost and stumbled upon Michael's volcano when holidaying in Hawaii, and that's how they made this collaboration. There's also a pretty funny video introducing Michael Humu Humu Kunu Kunu Apua, and all in all this was great fun to research and a very funny April Fool's. MIT Cube Lovers is thought to be one of the first ever and oldest cubing forums or discussion thread, and one of the first indicators of the cubing community uniting and coming together. It was an emailing list that ran from 1980 through to 2000, where anyone could post and reply via email about cubing and the mathematics of the cube. This was hosted on a server at MIT and was primarily a resource for speedcubers at universities. It's very interesting to see the evolution of cubing communication from this mailing list to the speed solving forums, Reddit, Facebook groups, and nowadays in many cases Discord servers. And finally, the very last entry on the speedcubing iceberg is the Haiyan Zhuang WCA controversy. So this entry refers to a Chinese speedcuber called Haiyan Zhuang, who broke the 3-blind world record 6 times between 2009 and 2010, dropping it down from 48 seconds to 30 seconds. Haiyan Zhuang didn't cheat, however the controversy comes from his behaviour at competitions. He would call the organisers beforehand and ask for 2 rounds of blind, as this would give him more chances, and even if they didn't want to, the organisers often felt pressure from him and he would threaten them. On occasions, when Zhuang was told that there would be no round 2, he would become violent and disruptive. And now I will quote from the WCA's official report. During the competitions, he has acted aggressively, threatened to physically harm an individual several times, and verbally abused other competitors and WCA delegates. As well as this, he would also try to become overly friendly with the officials so that he could try to bribe them or persuade them and sort of polarize them so that they would become in opposition with the delegate, and he would try to cause disruption and problems. His behaviour was deemed to be unsporting, and as a result he was banned from WCA competitions. But the story doesn't stop there, because after that, in retaliation, he helped set up a new organisation called CCA, the Chinese Cube Association, which held its own competitions and was completely unaffiliated to the WCA. Haiyan was an honorary president of this group, but luckily it didn't last long and the group was disbanded pretty quickly. All in all, this story just shows what can happen if you take things too seriously and become really obsessed with winning. Speedcubing is just for fun, enjoy it, respect people at comps, and don't be Haiyan Zhuang. Alright then, so that brings us to the end of the Speedcubing Iceberg. I really hope you enjoyed this video. It was very fun for me to research and put together, and I thought I'd just try something a little different. If you did enjoy it, please smack that subscribe button, bop that like button, and tell me your thoughts below, because there are a lot of interesting and controversial things today, so tell me what you think about them. Also, make sure that you use the discount code GuardCube whenever you check out at SpeedCubeShop, because you will get a huge discount, and you will also help to support my channel. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.